Hello and welcome back to Cannes Confessionals number 3. I was really excited to sit down with Paul Longo, who is the GM of AI in ads at Microsoft Advertising. And interesting factoid, Microsoft was the first AI LLM to actually have ads embedded within the native chat experience. So I think as we're thinking about a world where we're going to have advertising within LLMs, Microsoft is a place that we can take a lot of cues from to see how ads are performing there. And Paul told me some really interesting things about how ads are performing in Copilot right now. Let's jump in and hear from Paul.
So we launched ads in Copilot from day one. So when we first launched as Bing Chat in 2023, we had ads included. However, we relaunched, kind of refreshed them around October timeframe. And part of the reason that we kind of refreshed the ads is going back to that, like the principles that I was talking about. So when we refreshed the consumer Copilot experience, it's an experience that has a deeper level of EQ, and it's more companion-like. Now today it has memory as an example. So when you think about the consumer version of Copilot being more tuned to your interests and your personal likes and dislikes, and when it is more companion-like, we had to think through, okay, well, what does that mean for advertising in this environment? So we kind of adjusted our approach a little bit and came up with a set of principles. So far, not only has this been positive from a consumer trust standpoint, but we're actually seeing pretty significant increase in some of our metrics. So we're seeing 73% higher click-through rates, 16% stronger compared to our search.
Yep.
We're seeing 16% stronger conversions, and then 33% faster customer journeys when Copilot is part of the customer journey along with search, which I think makes intuitive sense. You're getting answers to your questions kind of in real time. Our CMO is here, Youssef Mehdi, to kick off the week on Monday, and he had a great quote around, the traditional consumer funnel is turning into a tunnel. And I see these conversational environments are really disrupting, I think, in a positive way, the marketing funnel, when you could really, again, get answers to 4, 5, 6 questions and move down that tunnel now, kind of in real time.
Next up, I sat in on a panel from the Women in Retail Media Collective hosted by Criteo. And the first panel discussion was on the topic of breaking through the noise. One of my highlights was hearing from Elisabeth Rommel, who is GM Global Seller and Brand Development at eBay. And I found her comments around leading from within to be very interesting. After 2 stints at Amazon, she came into eBay to lead advertising growth starting in 2021. And here is some of her advice for the women in the audience.
I also joined a company that had no one in the C-suite that had done advertising before. And so there's been a lot of education. And at first, I joined from Amazon, where I worked on 2 different ad products there during my, 18 years, 2 different stints. But with that, I had advice of don't shy away from saying at Amazon, we did this. This is what I saw. And using that credibility. I think being that they're very different cultures, at first I was a little bit nervous to come in blazing, like, oh, I come from Amazon. I know how to do this. But taking time and gaining trust, I think, has helped influence. And then there's always the financial aspects. So understanding how this helps the company and speaking with numbers, I think, has also been a key factor to getting our CFO's support and then getting the investment to grow. I was thinking about building on the seat at the table question, a time that you don't have a seat at the table. And things go on behind the scenes. And one piece of advice is have options. And do that by connecting with people and being curious. So building on asking the questions and using the idea of if you don't ask, you don't get. And understanding that when things happen that might not be according to your plan, if you're able to step aside and survey, well, here are all the other things that I could do, it's so empowering. And this, we're talking last night about a story of a particularly a manager that wasn't really the best to work for. And during a reorg, I was told, you're moving there, this is your fate. And I said, actually, no. I choose to move over to this other team. And the only reason that I could do that is I had laid the groundwork. And so just think about, it's not always looking around and thinking what's next, but it's keeping those connections, and through being authentically curious, understanding what else you could do when you don't have a choice and when someone tells you and you feel like you're backed into a corner. So just know your power, be curious, and make the decision that's best for you.
And just as a bit of background, Women in Retail Media Collective is a grassroots organisation whose mission is to help represent women in the space, and with one bold goal to get to 50% of speakers at industry events to be women. So I do recommend checking out Women in Retail Media Collective if that is interesting to you, and it's insights and advice like this shared from people like Elisabeth to a packed audience that this organisation is pushing for. And finally, I want to share a snippet from Andy Jassy's acceptance speech at Cannes this year. He was named Cannes Media Person of the Year, and in his speech, what really grabbed me was his explanation of how Amazon has managed to stay innovative after all these years. It still acts like a startup, even at its tremendous scale. Let's listen.
And then I think, related is speed. I think speed disproportionately matters in every business at every stage. And, a lot of times when you get into bigger companies, they sometimes convince themselves that it's hard for them to move fast. We have a lot of people, we have a lot of process, we have security, we have compliance. Speed is very much a leadership decision. And if you want to move fast, you can move fast. You can't flip a switch and do it overnight, but it is a very intentional decision. And the reality is that when you're moving faster, you're experimenting faster, you're iterating for customers and inventing for customers more quickly. And you find, not only do you help customers solve their problems faster, but you actually get to a better spot much more quickly. And then, I would say that wherever you can root out bureaucracy, as you grow a company, things grow up around you. As the organizations get bigger, it's harder to see deep in the organization what's happening, that's slowing people down. If you're going to keep inventing, if you're going to try new categories, if you're going to try spaces that maybe your prior background didn't necessarily predict, you have to know the customer problem you're trying to solve. You have to have a differentiated approach. And you have to have some competence, but you also have to be willing to fail. And that's a real interesting dichotomy at Amazon, because we hire very achievement-oriented, often type A people who hate to fail. Mm-hmm. But if you are pushing the envelope, which is inventors, you can't invent unless you're pushing the envelope. You are going to fail sometimes, and you have to be comfortable taking those risks, because nothing extraordinary is ever done by playing it safe.
As I was listening to Jassy's comments here, it made me think about all the opportunities in front of players in this space. The pace of change obviously is brisk. We are all just trying to keep up, but just remember, it's never going to be slower than it is today. We can only count on there being imperfect information and less time to make decisions and less context than we really need to make decisions. There's always going to be competing priorities and incentives. So I really love this call to arms from Jassy on speed being a leadership decision. Amazon certainly doesn't always get things right, but you can never say that they have been late to the party on a whole bunch of initiatives over the years. I'm going to leave it there for today. I'll be back tomorrow with some final thoughts and commentary from Cannes.